Roger, Mudfossil University. Today comparing Mudfossil University and Rod Warren's outstanding Venturi Accelerator to CERN. Now, Brian Cox is going to start off, and here he goes.
To help us understand forces, thousands of scientists around the world have spent billions of pounds to build this machine.
I'm standing 100 metres below the ground at CERN in Geneva, and this is the CMS detector, part of the largest and most complicated scientific experiment ever attempted.
This experiment will give us deeper insight into the forces of nature than ever before. It's a long way from when Isaac Newton pondered the laws of gravity, but all part of the same story.
Okay, let's find out what that story is. Rod has his own take on CERN. Let's see what Rod has to say. Okay, now I am standing outside of Rod Warren's outstanding Venturi Accelerator photographs with the accelerator itself. A pulse red laser from a construction site. Rod did this work and came up with this accelerator based on sending this light through literally two construction nails. That is his setup. Those are his Higgs bosons. That is Cherenkov radiation. These are bosons, which are extremely fast spinning particles, and they are made up of a box of magnets, which I will show you Rod also captured, spinning like that, which pulsates the electrons that are free floating in the air, always heard in history to be ether, which is what creates lightning, which creates static on you, which creates electricity, which creates potentials, which creates everything that we call electric. All right, let's take another look. Now you say, Roger, how can you make these crazy statements? What? Cherenkov radiation? Electron neutrinos? Higgs and bosons? I mean, come on. And what are you saying about this, Roger? Well, I am saying that is a reverse spinning particle. That's why it is white. It is, if they spin this way, they smash electrons away from themselves into polarized fields. If they spin this way, they pull them into their vortex and collect them as little white particles, which is in the other realm, I suppose they would call that an anti-particle. It's spinning backwards. It has the same, actually, rest mass. It was the same type of a particle that came through the accelerator, the same time, the same speed, but it bounced backwards and spin backwards, it appears to me. So that's what we're seeing here. Let's go a little deeper. Just so you understand how we got there. This is the pulse red laser. There's really only a dot in the center. You'll see that right now, which is the particle. It is not a wave. It looks like a wave. It's not. It's a particle. See the particle? That is a tiny little particle, and it owns a huge magnetic region, yes, but it's still a tiny particle. It's like a dot in the center of a basketball, and the basketball is just its sphere of influence, and there is no direct material there. The direct material is a little tiny spinning bar magnet right in the center, and I'll show you that in a second. And as it accelerates, which it clearly is, and it shows its dot self, which is a particle, and concusses here, causing enormous creation of reverse electromagnetic waves and enormous Cherenkov chaos, literal chaos. And I found something just the other day after working on these for 3 years. There's all kinds of dark stuff showing up here and here, and no dark stuff here. And I can show you, it consists of dark and white. And that always perplexed me, why there was only white here. And now I have found how it reconstitutes, and I will show that. First of all, this is why I can say that these particles consist of both positive and negative, and they are an upspin and a downspin. No power, power, no power, power. I think it might be a torus. And this is where it comes out of the accelerator, all blurry, globbed together, and then it starts to settle down. We see this for 2 waves. You see that? And then it flattens back out again over here. So let's look a little deeper. All right, so I've been looking at these pictures for at least 3 years or so, and I never noticed this until the other day. You see that little black dot and that little black dot, and then you see all these little black dark things trailing off here, and back over here you see all this darkness. That is positiveness. Where you're seeing these black spots, that in my mind is the darkness that we saw in those bar magnets that up and down spin. Now they're separating. They're obviously separated. The white is, because I always saw this as, how does this happen? How come, what happened to the dark stuff? But I can see them now. They're starting to be seen. And then apparently they reform somewhere out in this area and become back to the little black and white magnets, bars, or whatever they do. Because light is a photon, and they say it's a plus and minus charge together, apparently, that has no true polarity, although the electrons in their own self have polarity. Now, I'm still divided onto whether these are electrons or whether they are positron and electron together. They sure look like they're up and down, so I have to go with that. The things that I'm seeing, so I have to say that's light. I have to say it's not electrons. I say that is electrons. This brings it back to the light stage. Somehow, if we could harvest it at this stage and almost like separate positives from negatives, I mean, I don't know. There's got to be some way of intervening in here. Because at here, I'm saying, in my world, that is 100% negative, or electron. That black stuff is 100% positive. It wants to be together in those bar magnet looking things, and that will happen instantaneously, but not until it comes from this plasma phase. If it can be intervened here, some kind of electrode suck those off, I don't know. But I can tell you another thing. Rod told me that he could hear that sizzle now and then when he had it at a certain way. And you could tune these. They can be big, they can be small, they can be steel, they can be titanium, they can be copper. Copper, I would say, is going to have a huge surrounding number of electrons. That is the nature of copper. You could have other things that would have no electrons. There's ceramic things. I'm just talking, ceramic things do have electrons around, obviously, but there is densities, and what I'm getting at is there's a lot of things to do here to test. Rod is an expert at this, absolute expert, and he came upon this and started posting pictures of what he was doing, not realizing he was accelerating light. When I saw it, I said, this is phenomenal, and then he graciously worked with me because I was interested in it for the electronic theory of flood theory, electronic flood theory, which states that every single element, an atom, has a core of positive surrounded by a core of a negative, and that is the nucleus. It's flooded, so that it gets flooded. Now there's enough negative around there that no more can come in. There's additional negatives than positives. So they're just trying to go to those positives. More want to get to the positives. And like 2 or 3 or 4 more layers of electrons will come up and try to hold in there. And then they'll just layer out dependent upon the quantity of electron excess in those nucleuses. Simple as that. Now I'm going to buzz through this pretty quick because I find people have very little appetite to waste their time. Well, okay, I'm going to see how fast I can get through this. Here we go. Alright, gravity. Gravity is nothing more than Millikan's oil drop experiment, where he charged one electron falling towards the Earth, and he pushed it back with one certain amount of electricity, which he called 1 electron volt. It's tiny. It's 1.6 something times 10 to the minus 19th, something like that. It's forget about it. It's almost nothing. He says we could forget about him completely. No, you cannot. Every electron has 1 electron volt, and inside the nucleus, they are in the nucleus. In my world, electron flooding, they flood the nucleus, so the positives are in the center, the negatives are on the outside of the nucleus, and then there's a vacancy, and then extra electrons try to get in, and they are held out there in their quantum distances. I show this very, very clearly. Now, so there is gravity.
We understand the world today in terms of 4 forces of nature: the strong and weak nuclear forces.
All right, the strong and the weak nuclear forces. Here we go. There, right there, is the strong and the weak nuclear forces. The strong force is the positive and the negative crushed together and held together in the nucleus. Let's just start here so you understand the concept. Electron flood theory says that the nucleus of every element and molecule and atom is combined of a ton of particles, not just one big proton and neutrons and so forth. In the Bohr model, every proton, to me, has 1,836 bits per proton. Bohr model says it's just one big proton. It is not. It's impossible to do the things with isotopes and so forth that they do with one big proton like that and one big neutron and then one tiny electron. It does not work. There's 1,836 bits in one proton. That's one proton. 1,836 tiny little particles, of which half of them are positive and half of them are negative. And that's what creates one single proton, 1,836 bits. Now, the speed of light, it's not set whatsoever. I could show that. Rodney's accelerated it. It slows down in water. It's not even debatable. Light is a dipole. I've shown that. Positive, negative, positive, negative. And it spins, and it creates polarized fields around it. It's like a box of magnets spinning in a box of little tiny magnetic particles. And they just fly around it and create these patterns. Now, gravity is pull. It's pull. One electron from the Earth says, give me that electron, I will pull it down with this much electricity. That is nothing more than 1 electron volt. That means gravity is electricity. That means gravity is magnetism. And it's pulling anything that has electrons, and every single thing there is has electrons. Light has electrons. Electricity has electrons. That's why lightning bolts go to Earth, static electricity goes to Earth, and everything else falls to Earth. Now, what evidence is there? Well, I could show Venturi experiments by Rodney. Absolutely fabulous and overlooked. Accelerated as light. He even can create sound with light, is what he told me. Now, I haven't done those I did some experiments myself, but you can't do what Rodney did. And Rodney invented the particle accelerator. He did it. You know, it's just fabulous, and it needs to be looked at. So anyway, let's go back to this. That's the evidence I can produce. I can show accelerated light. I can show that light, well, I can't show, Rod can do these things, that the light accelerated, and it actually can make sound. And to me, that is just like breaking the sound barrier, only it's breaking the speed of light. And he has, because when it comes out of that Venturi and it comes through as those bosons, they are faster than they should be, so they don't interact until they are a distance out, and then they slam in and make those fields. All right, everybody knows what a periodic table is. Every one of those is an element, which is a different type of atom. All right, so let's start with hydrogen. It's supposed to only be one single proton in the center and 1 electron outside. So if we were looking at it in my model, it would look like this. There's the center, and there's the particle on the outside, and it could float anywhere in the outside distance, but it cannot get in there because there's already too much negatives. This is negative, this one additional negative. And if you check out the weight of a hydrogen nucleus, it weighs more than it should because it has an extra electron. One extra one got in there and said, okay, I'm coming in. They said, well, you can come in, but no more. And the next guy comes in and he hangs out here. He says, I cannot get there. And they said, that's right, you cannot get here. That's what orbitals are. And the more nucleus you get, that's one proton with an extra electron. Half is negative, half is positive. In my world, and I will show you this in a second, very, very simple, the central part of this is positive. The outside is all these negatives holding onto that positive. That creates this negative core. It's electron flooding. And I'll show you why I say this. All right, this is Latham's crazy machines. Absolutely fabulous. This is the negative surrounding core. These are all negatives. He's going to put a positive core in the center, which would be my electron flooding. And these are all the particles that go around outside of it. So it creates a zone of negativity around a positive core, still negatively attractive. And here's what happens. As he comes down, he's going to put see that's the positive core. He's going to put it inside that. So now he has what I am saying is a coated positive core coated by negatives. There it is. That's it. Now, as he shakes this thing around, that is just a norm. That will stay in its exact orbital if there's no additional input or cold, because cold and heat is nothing more than feeding electrons in, which he's doing now, heating it, pushing it around, get out of the way, and other things are flowing in here, or cold is pulling it away. Now, if he shakes that hard enough, eventually it will lose its grip, and there goes light. All right, this is about as simple as it gets, how to make wave functions. You see that? Those are wave functions. That's, hold on, maybe I gotta go more. That is the way magnets create the dark and the light. Now, this would be hydrogen. See that? That's what hydrogen's like. Now, the black in the center is your positive surrounded by all your negatives. And that is what would keep that electron in its orbital. Now there's a four-way. See the way the patterns make? Now watch if I just change the structure a little bit to square it up a little bit. What will happen? You see it? Totally different pattern. And that is true in molecules. There's different geometry to the particular atom. So some of them are cubic and some of them are different shapes. All right. So anyway, that's that. Okay, I'm not going to bother going through gravity. He's going to speak about something else. And every force, 100% of everything is electronic in nature.
There are three other forces in this universe, each of which is vital for our existence. Now, it may not seem obvious, but the force that holds these bubbles together is the same force that allows this flame to burn, electromagnetism. It's the force that allows us to push and pull things, the force that allows us to see everything in the world around us, and the force that allows your TV set to work.
It's the force that is everything. It's everything there is electronic. And the only two particles is a positive up and down spin particle and a negative up and down spin particle. I showed those in the light experiment. So I'll show those once again and we'll leave it at that. All right, I showed it to you in red. Now these are the green ones. They come out, they crash a little further out. Identical, same architecture. Positive power, negative power, whatever. And as they come out, apparently they're spinning. And as they spin, they polarize everything that's around them. It's the right-hand rule, and it's fully understood. You can see it in these iron filing experiments all the time. There's nothing special here. I mean, that's what they say. Higgs bosons, they smash and they form all these little figures that are going there. And then those are the Higgs fields. We did the same thing, only our particles, instead of being these big chunks, we did it with one of these. With just one coming through, and then they all had to come through the accelerator at the same time and crush into each other. So we did the same thing as them, only instead of hitting them head on, we just forced them to pinch into a restriction, and they did the job themselves. And I think that can be used in the future to maybe even create fusion. I have no idea, but I can tell you one thing. It creates plasma. And I can see it separates the white from the dark. Where it goes from there, je ne sais pas. There's CERN, right up here. CERN's using these. Cherry ink off radiation. We have cherry ink off radiation, only we're using these little bitty puppies. Electron neutrinos, electron showers. That high extreme white filament comes in, smashes into the stagnant air of the particles just floating around having a good time, and they just scatter. That's what you see there. Okay, I'm going to leave it at this. It's time that this is seen for what it is. Rod did this work. That is accelerated light. I don't care who looks at this. If they are looking at it with an honest eye, they have to say that is expanded and that is compressed. What happens in between is what's called deceleration. All right, so it was accelerated here. It is decelerating here, and that is a spin to the right, means it's spinning to the right, means it's drifting to the left. It's not disputable. It's not even something we should have to talk about. It should be looked at and be investigated and into what it really is, and that is fairness in science, and I see none. It's very, very distressing. I've had DNA evidence of things that are so incredible that they refuse to look. Same thing here. So incredible they refuse to look. And Rodney's just a regular guy. This is what upsets him.